aliens. Positively sure I'm absolutely mad about something. Oh, I'm positively sure I'm absolutely crazy too.
Hi, my name's Mark Starr and welcome to Little Green Man. This is the first of a four-part series about KPMG and how it is going to set the stage to destroy Manitoba health, push aside mental health and elder care, undermine your public schools, increase homelessness throughout the province, and increase student debt. And all this at the invitation of the Progressive Conservatives of Manitoba. It's going to happen because they've already been instrumental in doing the same thing the world over, and most recently in the United Kingdom with the collapse of Carillion. Now in part 2, I'll detail the highlights of KPMG's long history of tax avoidance scams, negligent audits and other unethical activity. Was it just ignorant incompetence or knowing corruption? And in part 3, I'll outline what KPMG's audit has already done to Manitoba and the devastation that is coming in the very near future. And in part 4, I'll talk about the beginnings of a plan, a strategy to prevent KPMG from further meddling in Manitoba's public services. We have to ensure that they don't do to us what they did to the hard-working people of the United Kingdom. So what did KPMG have to do with the collapse of Carillion? In case you missed it, I'll recap quickly. In January 2018, just a few weeks ago as of recording of this, Carillion, a multinational corporation, was in the news. Headquartered in the UK, it was a poster child for privatisation the world over. But the poster child seemingly overnight became an embarrassment to all neoliberals everywhere because it was forced into liquidation. It failed, and it failed in a massive way. This was never supposed to happen. Conservatives tell us that only government-run services are supposed to fail, although they never do. Private companies are supposed to be invulnerable, strong, capitalist strongholds that must be raised up on a pedestal and practically worshipped. However, well, that's just propaganda, a political lie. Because pretty much all private companies that take on public services fail in some way. On average, they cost about 40% more than when the government runs the services itself, by itself. But Carillion was the biggest failure to date. The devastation it leaves behind includes thousands unemployed, almost 30,000 people risk losing their pensions, schools and hospitals half-built, and several operational hospitals may be shut down, and the British taxpayers are left with the bill. A whopping £200 billion sterling. That's about $340 billion Canadian. That's a billion, with a B. And how much will Carillion pay? Well, almost nothing, because Carillion is a registered corporation with limited liability. So the rich people that own them will be just fine. And to neoliberals, that's all that matters in the end. And now I come to KPMG's part in this. In March 2017, KPMG signed off on the annual accounts of Carillion, saying they gave it a true and fair view of the state of the company's affairs. For this, it got paid £1.4 million, plus an additional £1.4 million of fees. One might argue, well, Carillion is a massive multinational company and KPMG were bound to miss something on a single audit. But no, they audited Carillion every single year since it was founded in 1999. They knew this collapse was coming. Unless they didn't do an audit at all. And maybe it was a fake audit, half an audit, a tiny bit of an audit, or they completely conveniently forgot a big chunk of the company that they should have audited. So after 19 years of audits and 10 months after KPMG last gave it a clean bill of health, Carillion completely collapsed. It blows your mind how anyone can take KPMG seriously. There must be another reason to hire such a failure of the corporation. There must be. And yet, we're supposed to trust them in Manitoba with our healthcare. Now back to Brian Pallister. Does anyone believe that he did not know about the history of KPMG? Its illegal activities and dodgy audits? If he didn't ensure that this company was properly vetted, it was gross incompetence on his part. But I suspect that he selected KPMG for at least one reason. And it wasn't because he wanted a fair and transparent audit. As far as I was able to find out, the only thing KPMG does is to produce reports that magically support what their clients want to see. Never the other way around. I mean, they've never. So what are the odds of that? And for that reason alone, you know that what the results are going to be. They'll be exactly 100% what Brian Pallister wants to see. That's why he paid for them $750,000 to do this. Maybe you think I'm jumping the gun. KPMG would never do that, surely. In 2016, it came to light that while working for South African Revenue Services, SARS, SARS, KPMG actually allowed the government's agencies, legal firm, to write the conclusions to what was meant to be an independent report. This is still being actively investigated in South Africa right now. This was before Brian Pallister hired KPMG. There is no doubt that Brian Pallister is going to get what we have paid for, an expensive ideological excuse of a report to put our healthcare in the hands of corporations and the rich people that own them. So we either get overcharged and can't afford them, or to break the public service so they can be totally privatized. And how much easier would it be to do that if the report's conclusions coincidentally say that's what should be done? Because apparently someone should be making a profit from your suffering. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Pallister has already acted on the preliminary findings of this report almost a full year before the conclusions were in. Now that for me is highly suspicious, really. Wouldn't a rational person want all the results before acting on it? How do you know what needs to be done and in what order? Particularly if later findings negate the need for that change. Well, the people of Manitoba wanted to see the results. Brian Pallister initially said that the full report would be made public. Then, in April 2017, Brian Pallister said he can't release the fiscal performance review because it contains proprietary information, and that KPMG owns the information. His hands were tied. Yet, CBC found that the tender documents that KPMG filed, they filled this out and signed it to get the contract, that those papers state that they had to agree to the information from their findings becomes the property of the government. Let that sink in a little bit. And then, because he'd been caught in this lie, Pallister said that KPMG reports constitutes advice to the cabinet, which is exempt from the Freedom of Information legislation. That's convenient, isn't it? But now, in 2018, he's released most of it, he claims. But what has been released was greeted with complaints that it is unnecessarily confusing. It seems that if someone feels forced to show you what they've been hiding for a year, they don't want you to see it. So they find a way to obfuscate it by making it confusing, or at least the public version anyway. Or does Brian Pallister want to write his own conclusion? As I've already shown you, KPMG has a history of doing that for governments. An honest politician with an honest survey would do the research and then, after deliberation, design a solution to fit the problem. But then the conclusion has already been decided. The journey isn't just a waste of time and money, it's an exercise in deception and manipulation. Now, when all that matters is pushing through policies that forward an ideology regardless of the result, there is no room for honesty and truth. And all that will be left is a pile of unfinished schools, run-down hospitals, and people dying at home without healthcare. It may seem like an exaggeration, but the process is well and truly underway. Pallister's progressive conservatives, like all neoliberals, say debt is bad, and they plan to use that as an excuse to starve healthcare and public services. They'll privatise your healthcare. They'll mix private money with public money at first. Then they'll find a way to privatise the whole thing. You will not be considered at all. Or let me restate that in plain English, or honest language. Because a spreadsheet shows some numbers in red, in the negative, you must give up your healthcare and anything else you rely on that your taxes pay for. Your lives and your families and your neighbours' lives are worth less than that spreadsheet. Conservatives say there's a problem, and the only way to fix it is to bring in a disinterested third party, KPMG, who, we have seen, is far from disinterested, who is far from honest, who has proven to care nothing about laws and the people it may hurt and will hurt. So I'll go into details of KPMG's history in part 2. So Pallister is going to use KPMG to fix the system. Yes, he will. But only in the same way that a gangster might fix a horse race. Little Green Man. This is the back door to the Manitoba Legislature. Now, if you hit the subscribe button now, hit the notification bell, then you won't be surprised when they try to stick something up your back door. Hi, my name is Mark Stannard and welcome back to Little Green Man. This is part 2 of our 4-part series on KPMG, the company that many conservative neoliberal governments bring in to justify privatising public services. KPMG was brought in by the Progressive Conservatives of Manitoba to conduct an audit of the province's healthcare system and other public services. This audit was supposed to produce a report that would be revealed to the public, and the results would be used to guide some changes. Changes in the guise of service cuts, which would be a massive boon to the province. I think everyone is in favour of running an efficient system, so knowing where the problems lie is the first step towards reaching a solution. But if the report that comes back from the audit is fair and balanced, then surely we should embrace it and work towards that solution. But can we trust KPMG to be fair and balanced? Well, let's see. So who is this company that the Progressive Conservatives have entrusted with the future of our healthcare? We discovered in January of this year, 2018, that a KPMG audit gave Carillion a clean bill of health. This was a big, massive public services company in the UK, billions of dollars, worth billions of dollars, and it crashed and collapsed. But yet KPMG gave it a clean bill of health anyway. And so at first glance one might be tempted to give KPMG a pass. Everyone's allowed one mistake. But wait, it wasn't one mistake. There have been many, many, many more. Now, between 1997 and 2000, KPMG regularly audited a company called Independent Insurance. Of course, it reported the company was running flawlessly and gave it a clean bill of health. Then suddenly, in 2001, it collapsed. PricewaterhouseCoopers was handling the liquidation of the Independent Insurance. They discovered something odd. There was a giant hole in Independent's accounts that KPMG should have spotted. PricewaterhouseCoopers sued KPMG for £300 million sterling. The Telegraph reported. Does it sound familiar? Carillion much? But wait, I've barely gotten started. The dodgy audits aren't limited to the UK. KPMG Botswana was accused of signing off on the financial statements of the Kingdom Bank of Africa Limited as a going concern. It was proven that the lender's liabilities exceeded its assets as far back as 2011. KPMG was sued for $18.2 million. In Australia, in 2015, KPMG overstated the assets of Discovery Metals, which led to the rejection of potential takeover, leaving shareholders with nothing. This led to the shareholders to take out a class action lawsuit against KPMG for $830 million Australian. KPMG has paid millions to settle dozens of lawsuits. Now hold on to your seats. I'm going to list some of them off as quickly as I can. So deep breath. 2003, KPMG paid $125 million to Rite Aid and $75 million to Oxford Health Plans Incorporated because of dodgy audits. 2004, KPMG paid $115 million due to the collapse of software company Learnout and Horse Speech Products. 2006, Fannie Mae sued KPMG for malpractice for years of erroneous financial statements. 2007, KPMG Germany was invested for ignoring questionable payments in the Siemens bribery case. In 2008, KPMG was accused of enabling improper and imprudent practices at New Century Financial, a failed mortgage company. KPMG agreed to pay $80 million to settle suits from Xerox shareholders over manipulated earnings reports. 2008, KPMG failed to reveal two of Tremont Group's Rise Select funds had $2.37 billion invested within the Madoff Ponzi scheme. 2011, KPMG failed to identify fraud in Japanese company Olympus. 2013, a former KPMG LLP partner admitted passing on stock tips about clients. This scandal led KPMG to resign as auditor for 2 companies. 2017, KPMG failed to uncover illegal sales practices at Wells Fargo for potential corruption at FIFA. 2017, KPMG paid $6.2 million fine to US Securities and Exchange Commission for inadequacies in its audit of the financial statements of oil and gas company Miller Energy Resources. And that's just the highlights. So the KPMG Wikipedia page has a healthy list of these negligent audits under the heading controversies. Many of the ones I listed are included, and several more besides. I challenge you to do a quick Google search. I bet you can find a few more that I missed. Think about it. These are the ones where they were caught. How many more have there been where they got away with it? Well, I guess we'll never really know. KPMG's questionable dealings aren't just limited to dodgy orders. They've been recently caught peddling a serious, almost treasonous tax evasion scheme in both the US and Canada between 1996 and 2002. KPMG tricked greedy clients into illegal tax shelters. Billions of dollars of taxes hidden away to help greedy, wealthy clients not pay their fair share of taxes. The CBC series, The Fifth Estate, has done a really good in-depth report on this. It's well worth watching. Link is in the description. So who with a sense of decency, with a hint of self-respect, with a reputation worth protecting, could even consider working with such a shady and clearly corrupting company? And how could anyone even consider them to work with a government after their criminal tax evasion scam? And I haven't even gone into the details of their misdealings with the government of South Africa and the scandal involving the Gupta family. That's a big one. I just didn't have the time or energy to break it all down for you in this video. I think the examples I've proved though are enough, don't you? But I think in all this, Jim Silver says it best. Jim Silver is a professor at the University of Winnipeg's Department of Urban and Inner City Studies. In an article he penned for the Winnipeg Free Press, which was also reprinted in the Brandon Sun, he says, "It is a splendid irony that even while helping wealthy people and corporations to avoid paying their fair share of taxes, and taking a cut of 15% of the taxes that are avoided, KPMG is busy now advising governments, such as the government of Manitoba, to cut spending on public services that are important to all of us, and especially those of us who are not wealthy enough to use offshore tax avoidance schemes." So let me ask you a couple of questions. Before he engaged KPMG, do you think Brian Pallister and his ill-named progressive conservatives didn't know about KPMG's negligent audits, tax avoidance scams and other shadowy deals? You think he didn't? Doesn't it make you sick to your stomach? And of you, I ask, knowing what you know now, do you want KPMG anywhere near your healthcare or other public services? Of course you don't. It beggars logic. Now in part 3, I'll outline some of the changes that the Progressive Conservatives have already thrust upon us here in Manitoba since hiring KPMG, and as they attempt to cripple Manitoba Health. And in part 4, I'll discuss what we can do to prevent KPMG's audit and report from slashing our healthcare, and even oust them from their position of influence of the services that keep Manitobans healthy and alive. Little Green Man. This is the back door to the Manitoba Legislature. Now, if you hit the subscribe button now, hit the notification bell, then you won't be surprised when they try to stick something up your back door.